immediately. Guys, I've got cotton mouth terribly. Would you mind if I just run and get a drink of water real quick? It'll take me about 30 seconds. Just please bear with me. I know this is kind of ridiculous, but give me a break here. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so sorry. Apologies for that. You guys have the link now? All right, so this is good. I know I've wasted a lot of your time so far, but from here, it should be fairly concise, and I'll try to make it so. Okay, so we're going to talk about the volume analyst now for NinjaTrader. And I'll go back through and explain the signals one more time for you guys. But let me start with the volume divergence here. Hannah's saying he downloaded the latest NT8. No, so the latest NinjaTrader 8 does not work with BlackBird yet. All right, sorry, I'm just trying to catch my breath here. NinjaTrader, they came out with 8.0.15 today. Previous version was 8.0.142. And the new one does not, it's not compatible with BlackBird right now. Okay. So it'll work for Bloodhound and the volume analyst, but it does not work with BlackBird yet. Okay, so this is the one that came out today, 8.0.15, and there are a huge number of fixes in this thing. It's a really, really important update, and it's they've corrected a lot of issues that I've been dealing with. So there are a huge number of fixes. By the way, I don't know if Vadim is in here, but some of you guys are interested in designing your own strategies, those of you that know how to program. And we've included the C# file to enable you guys to do that. So to work with a strategy wizard, strategy builder, they call it now, I guess, and you know, be able to create your own custom automated strategies or signals or whatever by accessing the volume analyst programmatically, which also enables it for the market analyzer properly. So that's in this latest version that's been uploaded just a few minutes ago. which is 3.12. 3.12, I believe. Should be, although mine is saying 1.1. He may not have changed the version number, but sorry, 3.11 went up a couple of days ago, day before yesterday. So this has fixed some of the issues that I found with the volume divergence that you guys probably wouldn't have seen. And the other main issue with the drawing was, if you'll notice, one second. Let me just ask Josh a question here real quick. Well, he's probably gone. I may have compiled the wrong version, but the other main thing that was supposed to be in this update, which I assume it is, Josh said it was. I may not have compiled the right one, but anyway, you see how it draws these little trend lines over here in the right margin? So we had to do a little bit of, well, just long story short, it wasn't so easy to kind of get this to work out very well. But if you're trying to do bar by bar back testing, historically, you're scrolling back. You could just reload the chart, but if you're connected to the data feed, obviously that doesn't work. Or if you're trying to use a like the trade tracker or something, the trade logging indicators, you can't scroll back and then reload the chart. You have to go all the way to the right and then go back. And if you can see the drawing objects in the right margin between the current bar and the axis, then you can basically cheat and have that hindsight bias, So to avoid that, we made it to where it would hide the objects if the entire object wasn't in view. You see how that object is no longer visible? So one of the bugs that I found was that the lower panel wasn't hiding the objects. So that's the other main drawing bug that's been fixed. Okay, and beyond that, the readers have been modified to allow connecting to multiple instances of the volume analyst on the same chart. Okay. Okay, Patrick. Yeah, I'll send out the recording here when we're done. So yeah, long story short, you guys need to use the previous version of NinjaTrader 8, which is 8.0.14.2. And I'll make sure that's clear up on the website when we get done here. All right, so to start off with, let's talk about the volume divergence briefly so I can explain the condition builder that we have here, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what we're planning on adding here for August. So this will be the main thing we'll be working on as far as the volume analyst is concerned. So volume divergence is looking for this exact pattern here. Typically, you want to look for something like this at the end of a move, at the end of a trend, but you can kind of define, how high the highest high has to be, like how many bars left that high has to be, or let's say the high of this bar must be above the highest high of the past n number of bars. So you can determine that, but the way that I've set it up, it does allow finding the volume divergence at the end of pullbacks as well, smaller pullbacks. So typically this pattern is an ending pattern at the end of a trend. And of course, trend is a function of the time frame that you're looking at. So on this 3-minute chart, on the visible chart, the trend is up, right? We're making higher highs and higher lows, depending upon how you want to define it. But once we get this big climactic type of a bar here, where we have a huge amount of volume to the upside, and this is maybe a a different kind of a special case because a lot of that volume was actually coming in to the downside there, as a matter of fact, if you can see it. So this is a little bit of a special case here. But anyway, typically the majority of that volume will be to the upside. And then you kind of hit a brick wall. You see the sign of weakness coming down from the high. And then you want to go up and test that high on much lower volume. Okay, so that's volume divergence. And there are a number of, just a ridiculous amount of caveats and special cases and conditions that have to be identified and dealt with, allowed for, to be able to find this pattern. Pattern recognition is some of the more difficult programming that that there is, as far as at least the type of programming that we're dealing with. So the original Divergences Pro algorithm that we're using in Ninja 7, that actually took me well over a year to design. You know, I don't mean like an hour a day for a year. I mean like, well, honestly, well over 6 months for 4 hours a day type of a thing. So it's a pretty involved process just to be able to get this to find only those cases, those patterns that you're specifically trying to identify. Okay, and one of the things that we've added in on top of all of that is a condition builder to define what the end bar has to be. So, you know, like right here, yeah, that's volume divergence, but it hasn't really ended on a signal bar. Okay, because the lighter gray, that's an up bar in the volume. The darker gray is just lower volume, and the very dark grayish, blackish is very low volume. So lower than the previous two and lower than the moving average. So we don't really have a signal here. It's just lower volume. So we can actually define that we only want to see those volume divergence signals that end on a specific signal bar. And I'm a little bit nervous here. I haven't really tested the latest one here. So much in this thing to test. It works flawlessly in Ninja 7, and it was working in Ninja 8 before, but we have completely rebuilt the VolumeAnalyst. Let me just kind of tell you why we've had to do this, because I'm sure some of you have wondered, you know, what the deal is with this and why it's taken so long. The previous version that we released in November, it was kind of a hodgepodge of, you know, where I started out with one set of functionality, and then we grew and grew and grew and added to the same code base. And now that I'm getting into, you know, this condition builder, adding in delta, adding in volume profile, VWAP, adding in all this multiple time frame stuff, relative volume on tick-based charts, which was a huge algorithm and undertaking. It wasn't designed to be able to handle all of that. No, Amit, you don't have to have Divergences Pro for this. We don't have the Divergences Pro on Ninja 8 yet. It's just in Ninja 7. I'll come back to your questions, guys, in a little bit. Let me get through a little bit of this, and then I'll look at the chat again. So it wasn't capable of handling all the new stuff that I've designed, although, I mean, you know, we could have forced it to, but it would have been a nightmare to debug, and it just wasn't set up properly. So Josh has kind of redesigned it with all of these future additions in mind. So it'll be just kind of a, you know, define what the input needs to be, and then write the file for the input and add it, rather than having to, you know, modify all these different sections and several different files in the code. So it's set up now to be able to handle all the new stuff that I'm working on much, much easier. So from here on, adding some of the more advanced stuff, it's, you know, not going to be easy what I'm trying to do, but it'll be easier than it was, and it'll be a lot easier to debug. Okay, so that's been kind of about a 7-month project, just rewriting it. And then I think 2 or 3 months of that was actually kind of programming out and testing, modifying, and getting this volume, relative volume on the tick-based charts working properly. Okay, but back to this condition builder here, which is where we're going with the entire thing. This is kind of the direction we're heading. It's almost like a sort of a built-in bloodhound, if you will. But the conditions are pre-built, and you just kind of select what you want. So maybe it's less customizable, but easier to work with. And we thought about making it to where we could kind of define different inputs, bring in different indicators and all such as that. But I think I'll save that for the next condition builder that I'm kind of working on now. So what we can do here, you've got a condition builder for the triggers, which is that little arrow, that's the trigger. So just to define this a little further, each setup, each volume divergence, and you should think about automated systems like this in general, you have a setup and you have a trigger. The setup identifies those bars on which you want to begin looking for your specific trigger conditions. And then your trigger conditions are usually price action related. Okay. So the setup would contain all of the conditions, you know, based around whatever indicators or, you know, whatever you're using, pattern recognition, you know, whatever, price action from different time frames, whatever the conditions are that make up your setup, that identifies the bars after which you'll begin looking for the trigger within a certain number of bars. And then again, the trigger confirms that setup. So for the volume divergence setups, I've got, you see that? So we have text alerts, and then we have a really elaborate alert system that can do emails, sounds, screenshots. It can even email screenshots of the chart to you, which is pretty awesome. Just a side note, I'm getting sidetracked here, but we have the ability, we can do it. It's just, we have to do it. We have to add it in, but we actually have figured out the ability or figured out the way to take a screenshot of a chart that's not active. It's actually minimized. So it's possible, and we can do it. And I think we'll add that in with this next version, this 4.0 version. So that's pretty cool. So we can take a screenshot of the chart that's not even visible and email it to you, which is obviously good for some of you that work full-time jobs and, you know, want to get the alert and then actually see what it looks like without having to go back to your computer. All right, so back to this. We have it broken up into setups and triggers. Okay, so these little circles will mark the setup bars, and the little arrow marks the trigger. Each one of those has a separate condition builder, and you can define what signals must occur within X number of bars or N bars to the left of the setup or to the right of the setup. And this is really pretty cool what we can do here. But this is sort of the direction I'm going to go with the rest of the signals than with the actual conditions that make up the signals themselves. So right now you don't really see what all it takes to create a climax bar or a churn bar or a volume divergence. But in the next version, I'm going to open all of that up, and then you'll be able to design your own signals, not just climax and churn and volume divergence, but you'll have a custom 1 and a custom 2, and you'll be able to design your own, whatever you want to call them, you know? So it's going to be really pretty amazing. So you won't be limited to what I think. Well, it's not what I think. I mean, it is what it is, but you're not going to be limited to what I've designed here. You can design your own. All right, so this condition builder right here, signals required for setup, bars to the left, bars to the right. Do you want and logic or logic? And would say they both have to be true, or would say either can be true. And then you've got two sets. Okay, so this logic determines the logic used between set 1 and set 2. Do both sets have to be true, or either can be true? Okay, if I just use one set, well, then this doesn't matter. So let's just use one set. Number of conditions. Well, I don't need 3, but you could have 9. The only thing in NinjaTrader that's weird is you got to click somewhere else and then click back to it to load stuff. It's just kind of odd the way the drawing gets updated, I think, because everything is just kind of on a unique thread. Some of the visual stuff doesn't get updated until you like click out and click back in. But there's really nothing we can do about that. I mean, we might be able to force like a virtual click or something, but I don't know. We haven't really gone down that road yet. It's kind of the least of our concerns right now, but you can add as many conditions as you want. And in Ninja 7, we have it defined where you can actually require signals from Divergence's Pro, which is another indicator separate from the VolumeAnalyst. But if it's on the chart, this can access those data series, the signals from those data series. So that's pretty cool. That's already in Ninja 7, but we don't have Divergence's Pro for Ninja 8 yet, but that'll be well, it'll be the first thing after the toolbar, so probably September. So let's say that I want to require an extreme climax. That's what that is. That's an extreme climax. This would be just a normal kind of a, if you want to call it, weak climax. And that's maybe on the verge of just barely being allowed. And of course, you can, make those as strict or what's the word I'm looking for? Lax, as strict or as lax as you want. Right, but that's an extreme climax and it's a high density climax. So let's say that we require a high density climax for volume divergence setups. So let's do that. And this is where you would get into kind of back testing and figuring out, what's best. And I'll explain how I'm designing this with back testing and optimization in mind for this next version. And I'll kind of explain how this will be laid out. So let's say extreme climax. It's not a 2-bar pattern. It is extreme climax. High density. That's a high density extreme climax, you see? So these are actually, whereas in Bloodhound, we access one data series, and each one of these signals corresponds to a number. And here, we've got them all listed out. Okay, so in the next version that I'm designing, the condition builder will be in a number format so that you can use the optimizer, right? Because the optimizer, to optimize a strategy to backtest and find the perfect combination of conditions or signals for that given data set that you're analyzing, everything has to be in values, and you have to be able to increment those values. So I'm going to make everything in value kind of number format for the next one. Okay, so high density extreme climax. Not entirely sure this is going to work. This is the one thing I haven't tested, but I'm showing you this to show you how I'm designing this for the future. Yeah, it looks like it's not working. Let me see. I mean, it works flawlessly in 7, but honestly, I haven't really even tested this. This is the last thing to get tested because I haven't defined. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm allowing all volume divergence signals, no matter what, and then I'm doing this condition building inside of Bloodhound. So I'm allowing all of them so I can see them visually on the chart, and then I'm filtering with Bloodhound. So I haven't really gotten around to testing this as like the last thing, but let me see if I can. Maybe it's the density that's not working. Yeah, it is the density that's not working. Huh. So it's pretty cool how we've done this. We've got maybe 10 different indicators built into the volume. And I guess there's probably twice as many as that, but we're able to kind of display, I guess, well, we could display as many as we want, I guess, but we're displaying the relative density, which is a separate input indicator, behind the relative volume, which is that fat bar. So those are on two separate, well, the signals that come from each are on different data series. So some of these have to combine data series, or I guess they're in one data series, but that data series accesses the signals from those two different plots. So it looks like there's probably an issue with that, which is, I don't know, it's probably just a couple of bad characters in the code or something. So anyway, but yeah, you see how it's working here. I've set it to Climax instead of high density Climax to allow that. And you see what it did? It filtered out these signals because there wasn't an extreme climax there. All right, so every volume divergence must have an extreme spike to start it. And this, I know I'm going in depth here, but this is a training session for you guys, for those that actually own it. I know a lot of you don't, but I figured I'd let, as many of you as desire come in and kind of check it out. Let me see this. Goodness gracious. I got it set to snap. Anyway, I could have just pointed to it, I guess, but that is a major spike in the volume, that little white dot. You see it? And this is an extreme spike. And you can make those characters whatever you want. I mean, I've got it set to a little white dot and a yellow diamond for the extreme spike. So I could actually allow volume divergence from the major spikes and the extreme spikes, or just the extreme spikes. Like there's even a third that is the minor spikes, and you can enable those if you want. I have them enabled typically on tick charts, but not necessarily on minute charts. So those minor spikes are these little dark blue dots. So those are sort of, significant volume bars, but not to the degree that a major or an extreme spike would be. Significant, but not necessarily huge. Okay, so at any rate, depending upon, whether we're allowing extreme or major or whatever, like if you allowed volume divergences from major spikes from these lower volume signals, then for instance, you wouldn't want to limit or filter the setup based on an extreme spike, right? Because it wouldn't be allowed, and then you'd have no volume divergence signals at all. So there is kind of a method you would have to, you just basically have to be logical about what you're selecting for the condition builders. But what I'm kind of envisioning, the way I'm going to lay this out, 1 second. So I'll have kind of presets in Divergences Pro and Ninja 7, I have like one property where you would change, like let's say I change this from 1 to 2. And when I would do that, all of the settings down here would change with that. And that would be a preset. So I'm going to have like, you know, very strict, normal, or lax, something like that, as far as the settings for how many signals are shown and the size or degree of those signals. So, you know, rather than having to modify all of these different properties to get kind of the desired effect with the potential to make mistakes and, you know, miss one, or, you know, when you're trying to type a 6, you type a 36 or something, you'll be able to change that preset, and then it would update all of those properties. Okay. And then we're going to also, with that preset, make it to where you can save your presets. You know how Ninja has this preset here? Well, the problem with this, and I'm hoping they sorted it out with this new version, the problem with this is when you save it, it doesn't save it as a file anymore. It used to say in Ninja 7, it saves it as a template file, right? In your templates folder. But here, when you save it, it's actually saving it to the UI, to the actual UI file in your NinjaTrader folder. So if I change any of these properties or modify them or remove one or add one back, the next time we update, if you've got one of these saved, it's not going to load properly. Okay, so not only for that, but also because of this, we're going to make it to where you can actually set your settings, and then rather than having this save and restore and preset and all that, we'll have a little property where you can click a save button, type the name of it, and then select whichever settings you want from a drop-down list, and it'll save those into a folder. Okay, so that's one of the things that I'm going to add, and then we'll have a kind of an advanced section for the condition building that I'm talking about, where right now for extreme climax, these are the main bar signals. Let me just define those briefly. I know I did it before, but I've only just started recording. So this is a climax, an extreme climax. In fact, we have climax and churn. Climax is a wide-ranging, high-volume bar, and a churn is a narrow-ranging, high-density bar, high volume per range. Am I still showing the right chart? I see people raising their hands. You guys can see everything and hear me fine? So you've got climax and churn. Climax is, again, wide-ranging, high volume. And then churn is narrow-ranging. See, talking about the range of the bars here, high minus low. That range is a lot smaller than the previous bar, right? Isn't that obvious? This is a wider ranging bar and higher volume. This is a narrower ranging bar, a smaller bar than the previous. Okay. It's lower total volume. Well, in this case, relative volume, but just, you know, thinking of this as just pure volume. It's lower total volume, but when I divide the volume by the range of the bar, it's higher volume per range than the previous couple of bars. Okay, so high volume per range as you're coming down into a low signifies demand coming in. Okay, especially with narrower ranging bars. So if you go from very wide ranging bars, then, you know, gradually narrower and narrower and narrower, where the volume per range, the density, which is, you can think of it as, you know, how much volume was required to move that bar every tick further within that bar, within that time frame, that time period. Okay, was it a very large number of contracts that were required to move every single tick within that bar? If so, then it's very high density. It'll be very high volume per range. Okay. So if you have that coming in at a low, that's a good sign of demand coming in. If you have that at a high, that's a good sign of supply coming in. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stop and turn on a dime back in the opposite direction, right? Nobody knows that. And of course, you know, people are coming into and leaving the market all day, every day. So just because one person, or let's say one bank or institution or group of people are coming in at a given price or time, and you see pretty clear demand coming in, that doesn't necessarily mean that the market is going to turn there, right? And that's why we use that market geometry to define those most likely future areas of supply and demand. Okay, and that's how we define the areas where the market will likely turn on a dime. Okay, and then we want to see that clear sign of demand coming in at those areas, and then that's where we actually initiate trades. Okay, when we get the confirmation in the volume, the relative volume at predefined areas where we're expecting the market to turn. Okay, so that's just a little primer on that. But here you see I've got high density even on this Climax, right? So how is that? Well, I'm doing the volume on one plot and the density on another. Okay, so the density is the fat plot behind the bar, behind the volume. And obviously the volume is the skinny bar on top. So a Climax will always be a wide-ranging high volume bar. You've got extreme and you've got just normal. It's a normal Climax. You could call it a whatever, major Climax if you want. Okay, but a churn bar, every churn bar has to have high density, or which is orange, or extreme density, which is this, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. Okay, so that's an extreme churn bar. Extreme churn bar has several other conditions that must be met as well. So you have to have, you know, X number of conditions for a churn bar, a normal churn bar, and then those conditions are even stricter for an extreme. You see how this extreme churn is a huge volume bar, and it's such high volume that even when you divide it by the range of the bar, the volume per range is still towering above these other bars. And just to put this into context, a slight change in volume from one bar to the next is significant. Okay, so this is actually, what is that, 168, I guess? Yeah, this what the volume analyst does, you see how it's plot 11, 10, 14, the way that we designed it, the way that Josh designed it for this latest version was rather than having each mode, because each, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but let me do it one last time, just so you kind of understand what's happening here with these plots and the way it's displaying and whatnot. You have these different modes in the volume analyst. So this is really 7 or 8, 9 different indicators, but we've combined them all so that we can use the conditions from each of them for any given mode. Okay, we're not actually sharing all of the signals between all of them just yet, but that's what we're doing with this condition builder that I'm kind of leading up to explaining here. So you've got volume, which is just raw volume. Okay, that actually incorporates the signals from the density as well, which it would display just like this does. This is the relative volume. It looks identical, only the output, the scale, will be in total number of contracts, as opposed to relative volume displaying percentage of volume, or let's say it's comparing the current raw volume for that bar to the average volume for that bar over the past n days back, which in this case is 6 days. Okay, so right now that plot, that scale, is in percentage. Raw volume would be contracts. Okay, volume shares the signals from density and then plots the density behind the volume, which is that fat bar. You see, there's extreme density and there's extreme churn. Every extreme churn has to have extreme density. And that's one of the conditions it has to have. And then it has to have about 15 other ones. Okay. But every extreme churn will have extreme density. And every normal churn can have either high density or extreme density. So obviously an extreme density normal churn bar would be, more significant than just a normal orange churn bar. So a yellow churn bar with a whatever that is, that kind of dark hot pink center would be more significant. Okay. And the way that I have this set up, the density is coloring the body of the candle, and the volume, or the relative volume in this case, is coloring the outlines of the candles. Okay. So I've got volume, relative volume, density, relative density. Relative volume shares relative density, volume shares density, and then we've got range built into all of these. And relative range is a separate thing. I'm not going to get into that today. It's more for like volatility. And then volume per second. I may go into this if we have time. It's already 5:10, but I may go another hour and a half or two. I've got a lot to cover, and I'll kind of chop this up into more manageable segments for you guys. I kind of want to get this. I want to get through a lot of this because, well, there's a lot to get through, and I haven't done one of these in a little while, so it's overdue. So I say we just go on here. Yeah, Han, the chart templates are according to the names of the charts. So if you right click and load chart template, you'll see a 3-minute to apply to the 3-minute. Tick 1, row 2. I haven't gotten into all that yet. I'll get into that in a little bit. And I'll have to add the details of that to the site, how I'm defining that. I mean, I'll go over that once I get through some of this other stuff. But yeah, real quick before I move on, if you guys move these tabs, NinjaTrader 8 allows you to put charts inside of charts on tabs. If you move them around, which you can do, it will dislocate the readers from the chart. So the readers are inside of Bloodhound, which is what enables us to create these automated signals and systems conditions. So they're attached to, number 1, the name of the workspace. Number 2, the tab, which is this. This is the chart tab. So potentially the name of the tab, if it's a custom name like row 2 is, and tick 1, those are custom names. So it's not only attached to the tab, but also the custom name of the tab. So just a quick aside here. I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but this does not have a custom name. So if I right click chart properties, you see the tab name here. Okay, I can use any of these to get different default information for that chart. I don't know why you would want all this stuff, but you've got instrument, all, full. Do you want to give the description of the instrument as well? Period, and period all do the same thing. I think there's a little bug there. I imagine the period would just be the 3, and then period all should be 3 and minute. So right now, period gives both. But anyway, if I put some custom text in here, then it becomes a custom name. Okay, so it's no longer, the reader is no longer attached to just the tab, but also the tab and the custom name. Okay, and if the name, if the period changes, like if I change this to a 5-minute, as long as there's not a custom name in here, then it'll still be attached. And what I'm, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, it's no big deal. I know that Han or Han is it Han or Han? I know that he's trying to build a workspace or something right now, so I'm just trying to make that clear. But anyway, I'll write all this up on the website. It's a little bit different in Ninja 8 than it is in Ninja 7. I've got all this stuff kind of already written out in some guides for Ninja 7, but Ninja 8's a little different. And, you know, I'm finally to the point to where I can focus on training and guides now that I actually have all this stuff working right. All right, 1 second. Gotcha, Han. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, sorry if I butchered your name there, but anyway, yeah. So the readers are attached to the chart, tab, custom name, workspace, and the location of the tab. So if I drag this 3 over here to the right, well then it's dislocated. Okay, and that's no big deal. If it happens, you can just download the workspace again and the template. But you know, I'm basically speaking to you guys that are customizing stuff. And real quick, let me show you. Pay attention if you're not. This is really important because you can very easily, when you're trying to change tabs here with your mouse, I'm going to design something to make this all hotkeys. You can very easily click that X button right there. And I don't think I've set it up. I just reinstalled. There is a setting to keep you from doing that, keep you from deleting it. I believe it's Tools, Options, Confirm on Window or Tab Close. You want to check that. Check that box. That's Tools, Options, Confirm on Window or Tab Close. And that will prompt you with a question. Are you sure you want to delete this tab or this window or whatever? And that's saved me quite a lot of hassle, because if I delete one of these, especially while I'm in the middle of designing and building a Bloodhound template, if I delete one of the charts, well, then I've got to start over. And it's, you know, it doesn't take a huge amount of time, but it's tedious, and you've really got to concentrate on what you're clicking on. You can easily connect it to the wrong thing. So anyway, another quick aside, Bloodhound has a, it's just a minor thing. I know he hasn't been too worried about display type stuff, but if you have a black background or one of the dark skins, like most of you guys will have a kind of a doo-doo brown looking color. Sorry, that was gross, but a kind of a dark color for NinjaTrader. And if it is dark, you have a number of different skins to choose from. But if it is dark, you probably will not see the name of the Bloodhound template at the top of the chart. Okay, because it's Bloodhound is always in black right now. And if the skin is dark, well, then it's going to color the text black and the background black. Okay, so the one that I use is slate light. And you can set that here as well. So that's Tools, Options. Okay, and it, you know, behooves you to go through all this and learn as much of these different options as you can, because it is a little bit different from Ninja 7. It's better in a lot of ways, but it's different. So yeah, check that and then okay. And now when I try to delete one of these, it asks me. Thank goodness. And I say no. Okay. All right. So now, define a little bit about those signals, but let me go a little bit further. So just to recap, you've got Climax and churn. Climax and churn both require different conditions for not only volume, and that's standard deviations, envelopes, comparing to the previous few bars, comparing to the average of the previous few bars, comparing to the average of the past, you know, several dozen bars. a lot of different conditions. And that was really the most difficult thing to develop, was which conditions and when and why and how. So it's got a lot of built-in conditions, but one of the major differentiations or differentiators between Climax and churn is the range of the bar. Is it a wide ranging bar? Is it larger than the past? Is it wider than the past few bars, or is it narrower, or is it at least as narrow or equal range to the previous bar? That's one of the major what's the word I'm looking for? Differentiators between Climax and churn. Okay. So you've got, for each Climax and churn, you've got an extreme and a normal. And I'll have not only extreme and normal with a condition builder, but I'll have two custom for each signal where you can define your own. You'll be able to kind of click and use drop-down menus. Actually, no, it's all going to be value-based. Sorry. So it'll be pretty easy to understand, but rather than having drop-downs, like for instance, this is a drop-down. So some of these have different drop-down menus. We're going to have a kind of a value-based system. See, well, all of these are values. So it'll be basically the same for a lot of these. But, you'll have enable or disable and then set the value, and then you'll be able to increment that value for the optimizer. So for those of you that actually know how to do system development and back testing and all that sort of stuff, you'll be able to use the optimizer for this. That's one of the updates actually in Ninja 8. They've updated their optimizer. So anyway, we're kind of moving towards automation more and more. Obviously, with technology, that's kind of the end goal of most technology. A lot of it is to eliminate steps, automate as much as possible, be as efficient as possible. And that's what we're aiming for. Most of what we're doing is designed around making, good analysis easier and faster. So you've got these different conditions for each of the signals, but you don't have access to all of them. I'm going to open all of them up so that you can modify them. You can enable, disable. Maybe you don't want this fast moving average envelope required. Maybe you don't even know what the heck I'm talking about with a fast moving average envelope. So you'll actually be able to have a, enable display as well. And I think we'll have to figure out how to make it happen, but it's typically not, it's not supported behavior, but it's not an easy thing to make one indicator load another indicator in a different panel. But I think we'll figure out a way to, you've got range, you've got volume, you've got relative volume, you've got density, relative density. I think we'll be able to make each of these load in another subpanel so that you can get a visual, or maybe we'll make a plot in the same panel, but half opacity or something and use a different scale. So we'll try to make it to where you can visualize what you're requiring for some of these. I know a lot of you guys really want to understand what makes up these signals and why they're important. And that's really one of the main ways that you'll come to wrap your mind around reading volume, especially across multiple time frames. I think that's where some of you have had a difficult time in the past, is really kind of understanding, well, what is it that I'm actually seeing here? Yeah, it's a climax, but why? What does that even mean? So that's what I'm opening up for all of you guys in this 4.0 version I'll begin working on. I've already written out a lot of stuff, and you see we've got like the true strength index. That's the TSI. That's a momentum condition. Eventually we'll have divergences pro to also require, momentum divergence or hidden divergence or what have you. So this is going to be pretty amazing. We've got a little profile per bar indicator that we're also going to show, where the point of control for each bar is, or at least, well, you'll have both the point of control and the volume cluster. So you'll be able to filter a signal based on if it's a selling climax, only show me those selling climaxes that have the majority of the volume in the lower quartile of the bar for a selling climax. And you'll be able to filter, pardon me, based on conditions such as that. Okay, so I mean, it's not for nothing. It's very precise things that I'm adding for very particular reasons. But you guys will actually have access to it and actually be able to design your own and really understand what this is all about, because I mean, it's all about volume, really. I mean, it's the volume that defines the market. It's the volume that builds the bars. Price moves because of people buying and selling contracts. So price is actually the second order indicator. It's not the first order. Like, you got all these purists, price action traders that, I don't use an indicator because I'm a purist. Well, okay, but yeah, volume is actually what creates the price action. And, I've said in the past that I'm not big on moving averages, and most of them don't really provide much as far as an edge where system design is concerned. But that's not entirely true. I think there are different ways of using averages that can be useful. But, and I've been guilty of this in the past, where you just automatically dismiss something based on the information that you have at the moment. And the information that we all have is not necessarily information that we've worked out ourselves statistically. It's mostly information that we've gathered from other people, and there's a lot of almost said misinformation. I think it is misinformation in certain cases, or sorry, disinformation. It's obviously misinformation, but sometimes I'm kind of curious whether some of it's not designed so that people will lose their life savings to those that are on the opposite end. And who are they but the big bankers? So anyway, without sounding like a crazy person here, yeah, so there are, just because, maybe you have an opinion that this or that is total garbage and, it's worthless, and that person doesn't know what they're talking about because they're using a moving average or MACD or something like that. But there are a lot of different ways to do this. I know that, and that seems to be everybody's kind of catchphrase when it comes to presenting. A lot of ways to skin a cat, whatever that means. But different things have certain value, and you can't know what that value is unless you can actually test it yourself, right? So it's one thing to say that price action is the only way, but unless you actually have statistics to back that up, then it's basically meaningless. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Basically, I'm saying that, we have a few pieces of information that we can count on when it comes to the markets and trading. You've got the price, and you've got volume. Unfortunately, you don't have accurate volume for Forex, but I'll show you how we can kind of get around that here in a minute, at least with a proxy. But relative volume on tick charts in Forex gives us some pretty interesting information. But anyway, you've got a couple of reliable pieces of data. You've got the actual price over time, or however you filter it with whatever bar type, and you've got volume typically. Now you can take those two pieces of information and you can run them through all sorts of inputs, or whatever, engines, filters, however you want to call it, equations. And you can take that data and display it some other way, which is what a moving average is, taking price data and displaying it, whatever. So you can do that with volume. You can do it with price. You can do it with, volume divided by price, or all sorts of different stuff. So price, and then from there, you've got open, high, low, close. You've got the range within a certain period, within a certain filter, bar type, essentially. And then the volume. And it's the volume that creates the price. Okay, so, price action purists, well, they've got some great ideas and they're onto something there, but it's really the volume that's the most important, and not all by itself, not solely volume, obviously, but volume relative to price and time period, how you're filtering the data. So long story short, I know I'm getting on a tangent again, but volume really is about the most important data, and you're not going to fully understand price action. For those of you that are purists, price action purists, I guess that's what they call themselves, or I don't know. There's a lot of people that are, holy grail price action dudes, but you're not really going to fully understand it until you understand how volume affects it, and not only affects it, but actually defines it, creates it. All right. Does that make any sense? I'm kind of losing myself, so I can only imagine I'm losing some of you guys. At any rate, I think I got off on that because I'm using this TSI, which is like a momentum indicator. And every time I add an indicator to a chart, I can hear 20 people out there saying, "Oh, he's adding an indicator. What a dumbass." So, we're looking at how fast price is moving within a look back period, up or down, whatever. I mean, that's what some of these oscillators do. Now, there are good oscillators, quote unquote, good oscillators. And then there are stupid oscillators that are based on, physics equations, which is just ridiculous. But at any rate, we'll have probably 5 or 6 different ones, like stochastics, momentum, rate of change, which is basically momentum, but we'll have balanced momentum, stochastics, RSI, TSI, stuff like that, just to be able to filter certain climax or churn based on, the speed of price, how fast price is moving down into an area or up. Is it going sideways, and over what period of time, how many bars, and several other things. I'll have, some average range settings in there where you're only going to look for climax bars when average range is very low or average range is very high. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with this. And I have a lot of it. I wouldn't say a lot of it, but I have half of it already kind of defined here for us. And this is just kind of prototype stuff, but we'll probably end up making it similar to the way the condition builder is for the volume divergence, but just depends on how many bugs we get thrown when we try to do this. But I was thinking, and this is Josh's idea about doing this, because he's kind of keen on trying to do it, but be able to bring in other indicators so that you don't, you're not limited to what we've got predefined. You could actually bring in whatever, I don't know, some custom moving average you've got, or I'm just trying to think of what else you might want. Maybe you have a support resistance indicator that you only want to allow climax bars that are touching it, So we'll attempt to do that. I think we probably would be able to do it, but I just know how finicky stuff like that can be. But anyway, we're going to have it all built out where we can get very specific with it, and then also be able to filter certain signals such as like volume divergence, like where was that one we were looking at? Like this one right here. So this is a volume divergent. I think somebody's outside. This is a volume divergence on a pullback. So this is a little bit different from how the algorithm, or let's say it's a little different from the theory behind this pattern. So this pattern, you know, the theory goes. If I can find a decent one here, let me just find a good one that will make a lot of sense. Give me 1 second, and I am going to get kind of deep throughout this session, I'm sure, if I haven't already. Getting deep. I think I had a good one in the ES. Yeah, there it is. And this is kind of almost in between. So I was going to talk about volume divergence at the end of a trend versus volume divergence at the end of a retracement. Okay. So, and let me know if you guys need to take a couple of minute break or something, like a water break or something. You've got volume divergence at the end of a trend, which is really kind of the theory behind this. And then you have volume divergence at the end of a retracement, a pullback, which would be kind of a trend continuation pattern. Excuse me, George. No, it doesn't have the volume profile built in yet. But that's the idea. That's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to have it to where the volume analyst will have every aspect of volume analysis built into it. We'll have bid-ask data. We'll have we'll be able to do several different things with the bid-ask data. I'll have kind of relative bid-ask data as well. But yeah, bid-ask, volume profile, kind of a range select volume profile like we have with the toolbar in Ninja 7, and then, you know, proper volume profile on a session by session basis. So that's what's coming. That'll all be built into it, hopefully by the end of the year. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm getting to, Han, is defining whether that volume divergence is at the end of a trend or on a retracement. So right now, I can either kind of filter out the potential for volume divergence on retracements and only show at the end of a trend, just purely based on the number of bars, you know, the highest high of the past 100 bars or the highest high of the past 30 bars or 1,000 bars. Okay, but I can't do both. I couldn't, or let's say I couldn't just allow volume divergence at the end of a retracement and then not allow it at the end of a trend, because to allow it for a retracement is to allow it for the end of a trend. Okay, so that's one of the things that I'll do with this condition builder. You'll be able to define at least 2 other types of volume divergence of every signal. So you'll have the kind of default volume divergence, and you'll have custom 1, custom 2, and you'll be able to define what each of those are independently so that you don't have to filter out every volume divergence signal based on that condition builder, but you would be able to display in a different color and access via different data series those that you have defined according to whatever conditions you've set for. We'll have this split up into 2, where you have initial swing conditions, which I don't know, maybe we would call that the setup start, and then setup end, which right now this is for the setup end. So we'll have it both. You'll have you'll be able to say, yeah, it's got to be an extreme spike, but it also has to be over 500% relative volume, or 2 times the width of the average, like a moving average envelope or something like that. So we'll have all of that to where you'll be able to display those that you filtered in a different color, access in a different data series, and then backtest or automate specific ones. Does that make sense? So I'm spending a lot of time on this when I probably shouldn't, because this is all, in the future. Let's, I guess, focus on what we've got right now. So this is a pretty good example of volume divergence, though. This is a really good example on a retracement, on a pullback. And that's one on an exact triple top, which is kind of a rare thing. Just makes me think of people specifically trading double tops and bottoms and triple tops and bottoms. I guess you don't know until you try, but that's one of the things that tests like the worst, trying to trade a double bottom or a double top, because it's really not a double top or a double bottom until after it's happened. And they happen so rarely where it actually turns into a true double top or bottom. Can't tell you how many double tops and bottom systems I've built for people. But yeah, anyway, that's one that's a pretty good volume divergence that actually probably ends on, what is this, the 10th? A 2-bar pattern back here, maybe. Wouldn't you know it? I don't quite have enough days. Let's see. I'm just curious here. I'm wasting time now. I'm just curious how this ended. This really is cool that we can have relative volume on tick charts now. It's really pretty exceptional. I mean, look at that. This is volume that would essentially, no, that kind of volume wouldn't go unnoticed. I was going to say sometimes it goes unnoticed, but that's 5 minutes before the open. And I imagine that was high volume anyway, but I mean, that's kind of exactly the way it goes there. Huge amount of volume right at the major turning points, relative volume. And then here it comes down in a nice corrective pattern. 3 churn bars in a row. That's a pretty rare thing right there. This is the trade we'll do in market replay here in a minute. Pretty amazing. All right, so let's just see real quick. I'm just curious here. There's a 2-bar pattern followed by an extreme churn bar. That was about the high of the day. Relative volume. There's a 2-bar pattern. It did come down a bit further. This is the low that we were looking at in the 30-minute. But this is relative volume on a tick chart. And obviously, finding support near the previous low. I was going to say on that line, but that's just kind of coincidental in that case. There's extreme churn at the low of the day here. Retracement high, higher low, low before the reopen. Where's the 10th low of the day there? This is kind of weird here. What's going on? That's kind of funny looking, actually. Well, at any rate, I was thinking maybe we had some sort of 2-bar pattern there, but it's not showing very much data on the tick chart. Yeah. All right, I'm not going to waste any more time here. Nah, I didn't load enough days on that one. All right, so anyway, where was I? Goodness gracious, I've lost myself. I know I've lost you guys. Oh, where was I? Let me see. Let me gather my thoughts for a second. I guess I've explained the signals well enough for now, right? And the future condition builder and all that, what it takes to actually build one of these signals. One thing I'll just say before we move on to Bloodhound and Blackbird, these, well, I guess a couple of things here. The way that I've got these workspaces set up in the trading room. Oh, real quick, this average range, Jordy, is fixed. There was some weird stuff going on with that, and it wasn't even highlighting the colors properly. So I don't know if everybody noticed that or what, but this was all kind of crazy. So that's been fixed as well. The way that I have the workspaces set up for the trading room is basically I've got kind of a similar series of charts, but the smallest chart is a 2-minute chart. And well, it's not the smallest, but it's the smallest minute chart. Yeah, so here's the 2-minute chart. This is the 6E. This is actually raw volume, not relative volume, but the raw volume. And then I've got a progression of charts from there, but I'm typically focused on looking for more, how would you say it, just larger retracements, and not necessarily looking for like, you know, that low there. I'm not really focused on trying to trade that little low or even that one. You know, I'm more looking for some of these bigger moves. And I think, yeah, it's kind of worked against me sometimes. I mean, other times it obviously works pretty well, but you can, the larger the trade, the more, or let's say the larger the swing that you're trading, thinking that you've gotten the end of it. Of course, it depends on how you trade and how you enter trades and whether you're getting in as it's moving in the direction of the trade you're taking, or if you're trying to get in as close to what you think is the end of the move as possible. Typically, I'm doing the latter. I'm trying to get in short at a high, very close to the high, very near the end of the move. So for instance, here on this big, I don't even know what the price for the 6E is. I don't know what happened. Really haven't been paying attention at all as I've been doing all this work for all this, well, for a long time, actually. When I'm not doing the trading room, I'm not even watching the markets at all, but that's all about to change here soon. But anyway, at the end of this big move here, if I were trading this, I would be trying to get in as close to the end of that move as possible. Okay. And the way that I have the progression of these charts in NinjaTrader 7 for the trading room is looking for a little bit larger trades. Okay, so the charts in Ninja 7 aren't quite set up to be able to do what I'm attempting to do in Ninja 8 with these recent workspaces and templates. So this is the row 1 here, and I've got in Ninja 7, I've got a dark blue like this so that you know that this is the one you put Blackbird on. I just didn't have time to do all that in Ninja 8. But I'll probably do that in the next set of workspaces, just make it unique so you know that this is the Blackbird chart. But I'm kind of starting at a larger period in Ninja 7, whereas in Ninja 8, I'm attempting to get, well, several more trades, but not necessarily requiring, you know, a much larger retracement or a larger swing to try to enter the end of. I'm looking more for, sorry guys, I'm just trying to get this set up here. I'm looking more for some of these smaller retracements. So now I'm allowing trades like this. This is actually one I would probably have taken in real time, because that is a gorgeous setup there. But see, we don't quite have it looking this good in Ninja 7 because we don't have the relative volume in Ninja 7. Because of the relative volume on tick charts, we have relative volume for Ninja 7, but it's only for minute charts because it's a time-based calculation. So to be able to do that calculation takes a considerable amount of resources, CPU, and we can really only do it in NinjaTrader 8. So I'm just curious here how this is looking in NinjaTrader 7. Well, I can't display it anyway because I'd have to connect to the data feed. So anyway, I am allowing and searching for some of these smaller retracements. Okay. Now it's also the way that I have it set up, talking about the Bloodhound templates now in Ninja 8. The way that I have it set up is to allow both. So it is still going to find some of these larger moves, larger swings, which is, I'm trying to get this thing lined up here. Man, Ninja 8 is weird with the way you see this, the way the charts snap. You have this gap around the edge of the monitor. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And then the programs that I have that will snap the windows, they don't seem to recognize these charts. So it's a little different. Anyway, I'm just trying to get this thing kind of lined up here so I can show you what I'm talking about and give you a couple of examples. Yeah, that's a decent one there. This is probably the low that we'll do today in market replay. So this is a pretty picture perfect kind of a correction back down, right? Well, let me load some more days here. Okay, one caveat. What we're doing here in Ninja 8 with the size of this template in Bloodhound is it's a huge number of conditions inside of Bloodhound. And when you load it on a lot of days, which you don't have to do in real time, but obviously you would have to do this if you were back testing it, it takes a little bit of time, a little bit more time than you would normally have to wait. But that's, purely based on the number of charts that we're accessing and the number of solvers. So I actually have, for, like I said, it was 11 different solvers for each chart. And what is that? 4 different charts. And this is a pretty fast setting for the row bar. So this is a minimum of 30 seconds. So each bar is between 30 seconds and 3 minutes and 375 ticks minimum. No bar can be larger than 9 range. I guess I don't need to get into all the details of that right this second. For those of you that do own it, let me pass you a link real quick so you can make sure you remember this. One second, because some of you may not know that this is up. And I've been waiting to send out an email about updating the website until I get a few more things up there. So I'm just kind of putting a little bit up here and there. Well, I'm not here and there. I mean, I'm doing it gradually each day. But here we have, for the row bars, understanding the row bars. And this will describe to you exactly how the bars are built, how they're made, and when the new bar opens, according to what settings. And then if you remember the trading room, I have a list here, or a document loaded from Google Drive, showing you how I determine the settings for the charts, the period for the charts, and the values for each market. Okay, I've been meaning to update this once a week, but that's just not happening recently with everything I've got going on. You guys see that? Values for the row bars here for the trading room. And then understanding how the bars plot is right here. Cool. Okay. Let me see if I can find one of these larger ones. Yeah, like this would be about the largest setup that this template would allow right here. So, you know, because what we're doing here, and I'm moving into the strategy templates now. So because what I'm doing here is based solely on volume, I don't have any of our market geometry or, you know, Divergences Pro or anything like that built in. I was thinking about adding in maybe some momentum conditions, but until I get the indicator reader where I can actually access just raw indicator values from other charts, not necessarily the values from the VolumeAnalyst, but any other indicator, until I can do that from the other charts with the indicator reader for NinjaTrader, which is yet to be ported, but probably will be soon. I'm not trying to add in you know, conditions from whatever oscillators or any other thing. So it's based solely on volume, these templates. But I had to do some sort of trend conditions. So, I mean, I've got a few things that I would typically do. One of which would have been the linear regression channels, linear regression averages, the lines. But because the lookbacks of those have to be so large, that requires that I must load even more bars to the chart. And, you know, in real time, you want typically maybe 5 or 6 days on this chart. And that's about it. You don't really need anything more than that. Anything more than that, and it's going to take, you know, well, not exponentially, but gradually larger or longer and longer to load the chart. I mean, even with 20 days, it doesn't take that long. But, you know, NinjaTrader, you might expect it to be instantaneous, but that's not the case because we have this. We have this many solvers in here, which is really what it takes to combine the different potential reversal patterns across this number of charts, 4 charts. So you have multiple different combinations. I mean, I've put a lot of time and thought and effort into this, literally over 12 hours a day for several days. Well, that's with interruptions, but just dedicated to this at least 8. But, you know, some days working 20 hours or more on this. Now we have the same solvers, same conditions for each of the charts. So these are the spikes. For instance, that's an extreme spike at a high. That's a major spike at a high. And then we have these 2-bar patterns. So this is what I meant when I was asking, you know, where did I leave off? This was the next major thing that I needed to describe to you guys. So before I explain the rest of what's happening in that template, let me show you a couple of examples of what we're calling a 2-bar pattern. I mean, this is not, you know, it's not like rocket science or something here. It's nothing copyrighted, but it's essentially a selling climax, in this case at a low, followed by a churn bar, a narrower ranging, higher volume per range bar. Okay, so that's a series of 2 signals, the first of which is a climax, second of which is a churn bar. Okay, so we have these in a specific data series where essentially what it's doing is it's giving us the signal for the churn bar, but only those churn bars that follow a climax. Okay, so this is an extreme churn after an extreme climax. So that would be the largest signal, or let's say the most significant, the strongest. Okay, but this is just a normal climax followed by a churn bar. This again is an extreme climax followed by a churn bar. So we see these at a lot of major turning points. And one of the things that I would look for, like for instance, let's see. Oh, wow, we got a huge amount of volume coming in here now. Huh. Looks like it's kicking off a sell-off. Uh-oh. So one of the things that I will look for, like for instance, if we have, yeah, like right here, well, this is maybe not the exact kind of example that I was thinking about, but here we have a volume divergence that ends on a 2-bar pattern. So that would be about the most significant volume divergence that you could find. In this case, though, it's just barely volume divergence. If it were a little bit higher, it wouldn't be allowed because the volume would actually be greater. But in this case, it's significant either way because you have 1,500% relative volume. It's definitely some big traders coming into the market there, especially in the overnight. So that's where a lot of major turns will occur. And obviously, it's easier to manipulate the market when there's less total volume. So anyway, not that people do that or anything. One of the things that I look for, though, is let's say that we have a volume divergence. Let me find one here on the 3-minute. Actually, let me find one a little bit larger. I'll look for a 2-bar pattern on, say, some of the faster charts to confirm the volume divergence on some larger charts. Yeah, this would work here. So here you have a pretty sizable retracement and a pretty obvious uptrend, but after a series of pretty large retracements, and then you have this retracement back into these highs, ending on volume divergence on this pretty large tick chart. So this is tick 2. This is 3 times larger than tick 1. All right, so yes, it's volume divergence. It's actually even ending on a churn bar, but on one of the faster charts, I would look to confirm that even more with a 2-bar pattern on one of the faster charts. So let's see if we have that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So on the 3-minute, what date is that? 24th. I like this in NinjaTrader now. They tell you exactly what section of date you're looking at. Right here. Yeah, so on the 3-minute, not quite, but then it's pretty much about the same number of bars as you have here. So you wouldn't expect it to have that maybe on the tick 1. Let's see. There's the end of it. No, you don't have a 2-bar pattern, but you actually have 2 churn bars in a row. So you have a pretty big churn bar here. It's not quite a climax because the range is smaller than the previous couple of ranges there, but the next bar is even larger volume and larger volume per range, the density. And it's an even narrower ranging bar closing up off of its low. So that's about an obvious sign of demand coming in there. Can you guys just give me like a minute and I'll be right back. I just need to take a quick break and I'll be right back. Just bear with me for a minute. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them, and then I'll take maybe 5 minutes, answer some questions that any of you guys have, and then we'll go into the Bloodhound and Blackbird templates. I know this is going pretty long, but again, I'll cut this, I'll chunk it out and upload the different sections to the site. Okay. All right. I'm back. Sorry, guys. It's going long. It's going long. I know, but we've got a lot to cover. I don't know why I want to do it all in one day, but I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of what we're about to do here. Yeah, this is NinjaTrader 8 that I'm showing here now. I have it in both 7 and 8, but in NinjaTrader 8, we have the relative volume for the tick charts. So, normal volume, just real quick, I'm just going to answer a couple of questions here. If you guys have any other questions, I'll take a couple, but I'm not going to go beyond about 5 or 6 minutes. So relative volume on a tick chart normally obviously looks like this, just raw volume. Still can be useful. You're looking at total number of contracts per tick, which would give you an idea as to, whether you have maybe some big money stepping into the market, but they can hide their orders too, and they can iceberg and scale in and use algorithms to enter their large positions. So you might not necessarily know when big money is coming into the market, but you can see total number of contracts per tick with raw volume on a tick chart. That's what you're looking at. Average volume per tick, average number of contracts per tick. So that's looking at the volume, one way. Looking at volume on a minute chart is looking at the total number of contracts per time period. Minute charts will display climax bars much better than on a tick chart because the range, the variation or the variance in the range from one bar to the next on a tick chart is not nearly as high as it is on a time-based chart, right? Because, typically with climaxes, you're moving very far, very quickly. Whereas with a tick chart, when you start moving very quickly, you get a lot more ticks, a lot more volume, and that bar will close much faster. So different charts display the volume in different ways. With relative volume, we never could display relative volume on a tick-based chart because it's a calculation defined by time. Relative volume is looking at the average volume per time period, per a specific time period, and then comparing the current bar's volume to that average volume for whatever time period that bar is in. So it would look at, say, this bar. If this were a 5-minute bar, I would compare this 5-minute bar's volume to the average volume for that time period. And with a tick chart, each bar closes, some of them may close in 200 milliseconds, and then other bars may close in 20 minutes. So each bar has to be kind of taken you have to calculate the relative volume for each bar independently. And then when you do that, you run into the issue with, potentially looking at very fast bars that are only a few seconds and then comparing that volume to the average for that, very limited time period. And you get into, potentially some kind of, I guess I wouldn't want to say inaccurate, but overly, how should I say it? You might get like some 20,000% relative volume bars for certain bars that close very, very quickly. Whereas you could average that, very small time period or number of seconds that makes up the duration of that really fast bar that closes very quickly and compare it to, a certain minute period that bar would fall in. Like, let's say it opened at 12:31 and closed at 12:31 in 5 seconds. Well, you could compare it to the volume for that 1 minute bar that would open at 12:30 and close at 12:31 or 32. or a 2-minute bar or a 3-minute or a 5-minute. So to do this relative volume for tick charts well, to make it as effective and accurate as possible, once we started doing it, we didn't really know what all it would take to make it work the best way possible. And the calculations that this thing does to arrive at the data output that it does are pretty intensive. So it's not something we could do for NinjaTrader 7, long story short. And now that we have NinjaTrader 8, we're kind of taking this thing to the next level. So relative volume on tick charts was one of the most important things that I've been wanting to add for a very long time. The next really important thing will be the bid-ask data. Okay, so yeah, this is NinjaTrader 8. It is on Ninja 7 as well, as are all of our other tools, including this toolbar, which does all the market geometry, alerts, volume profile, and everything else. Just a few dozen different things here. But this will be the next thing that we're porting over to Ninja 8, which we're about halfway there, I'd say. So we'll probably have an alpha version of that soon. One second. Did anybody install the new installer? Does it still say 3.11? It does. Okay. I think it should be 3.12 though, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah, Shane, we can do stocks, and I'll show you an example of that. I'll just go ahead and open it up so you can see it. Yeah, and then this is relative volume. Remember I was telling you about that 2-bar pattern? This is relative volume on a tick chart of Apple. And there's that 2-bar pattern right there. I don't know if that's actually the low though, because the ES is cranking it to the downside right now, isn't it? I'm just connecting to the data feed in Ninja 7. But yeah, this is for Apple, and you can use this, the same chart template for any stock. And I've got a chart template for each of these. You just open it up, and then you can check the workspaces, but I think the 30-minute has 60 days, 15-minute has 60 days. All three of these charts, or these two charts, have 22 days. This row 2 has 16. And then I think I have like 6 or 7 days on the row 1 while I'm running it live. And then if I'm back testing, I may, increase it to whatever data I have access to. But yeah, this is Apple tick chart. This is a pretty large tick chart, really, and I didn't have access to the tick data. Let me show you how I would do this. Excuse me, I need to do this anyway for you guys. We'll just do this, and then we'll get into the templates here. So with this time frame tuner, and see with Kinetic or IQ Feed, I only have access to 7 days of tick data and less outside of business hours. So I can only download, extended periods of tick data before the open or after the close. I think it's actually like after 5 or after 4 Central. Anyway, I needed tick data for the pound and also for Apple. So what I'm doing is I'm finding what is the average number of ticks that would emulate a 2-minute period, a 2-minute bar during the day session, during the business hours, RTH session, the regular trading hours. And I set the tick 1 to that value. So in this case, it's 648 for the pound. Let me open that up real quick. Just remember that 648. I just did one example for a 4X and then one example for a stock, but I'm going to build out some more workspaces and templates for you guys. Well, for myself as well, obviously. Yep. So the row 1 has Bloodhound on it. If you're going to run BlackBird, you don't need to leave Bloodhound on there, but Bloodhound has to be set up to calculate on each tick. So we'll go over that in a second. And this is what I'll be adding to the guide. I already have a pretty extensive guide for NinjaTrader 7. And I'll modify that one for you guys for Ninja 8 because it's pretty similar, at least as far as the requisite things you have to know and enable, the way you got to set it up. All right, so tick 1 is going to be the value of that output right here. So about like a 2-minute chart during the day session, 648. I'm doing it a little bit differently in Ninja 8 than the method that I use in Ninja 7, which I have written out in those guides I showed you on the website. Okay. So tick 1 should be 648. Pretty close. That was just a guess. 648. Just eyeballing it. Okay, and then tick 2 will be 3 times that value. And then for the row 2, I'm basically dividing that in half. So what is that, 324? So for the row bars, you have a minimum range, minimum ticks, and minimum seconds. Each one of these has a maximum. And the maximum is that last value. That last value is a multiplier. So what did I say, 324? And 6, and then 90 and 6. So that's really the only value I need to change right there. So that's half. And then this one is a third. So the row 1 is a third, or no, sorry, in here, yeah, it's a third. Yeah, so it's the row bars are set up the same way as I do in Ninja 7, actually. I don't know why I said it was different. I think I started off doing it differently. One thing that is different, though, in Ninja 7 for the trading room, I start with a 3-minute period instead of a 2-minute. So in Ninja 8, like I said, I'm trying to identify some of those faster bars or sorry, faster setups. What did I say? 324 divided by 3. Yeah, 108. And then 30-second minimum, 3-minute maximum. No, you know what? It is different. I'm dividing by 2 in this one. Yeah. Sorry, guys. In Ninja 7, I'm dividing by 3. Here, I'm dividing by 2, actually. I'm probably losing you, but just bear with me for a minute. Let me just check something real quick. I'm pretty sure the ES is looking at divided by 2. So tick, that's the wrong one. Yeah, here's the ES. Tick 1 is 1500. So row 2 should be half of that, 750. And then row 1, I think, is half of that. Yeah, okay. So, yep, dividing by 2 in Ninja 8, and then by 3 in 7. What is that? 160. I don't know why I can't do math right now. 162. There we go. Okay, so that's set up now. I just have one more, which is tick 2, and that's 3 times the value of this tick 1, which is 648 times 3. $19.44. Yeah, Pep, it is. Yep, it's in the trading room. There's another one though. Here. Well, let me just grab it real fast. It'll take me 2 seconds. Here you go, Pep. Reinstallation of what, Han? Not tonight for me, Han. I could get Cedric to get on with you tomorrow morning. Did you install? You'll have to set that up with Cedric. Did you install the latest version of NinjaTrader? Is that what happened? If all you did was you put 14.2 back. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to you about it when I'm done here. So this is pound done here. Let me do Apple now. Okay. And I'll use the RTH session here and then calculate. Did you restart your computer between? Yeah, you've got to restart your PC between uninstalling the previous. If it's Ninja 8, there's something weird with it. I mean, you can log back into the webinar, but you have to restart your PC. Scott, all you do is open up one of the workspaces after you install it. Is anybody else having trouble with the latest installer? Did you install the new workspace? Jordy's, it's all fine for Jordy. Yeah, this is recorded and it's actually up on YouTube right now. And there's the link right there. All right, so this is 374 for the tick 1. Let's see if that's divisible by 6. Looks like it is. Nope. So 62 times 3 times 2. So I'll use 372 instead, so that it's divisible by 6 and I don't have to end up with a decimal with the last one. All right, so this should be 372. That seems pretty fast, but that's what it says. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay, and then 372 divided by 2 is 186 for this row 2. 13.1. What is 13.1? NinjaTrader's on, what is it? No, you got to have at least 14.2. Previous version is 14.2. I don't know where you found 13.1. That's pretty old, isn't it? Well, relatively. I think there have been a few updates since 13. Okay, so 372 times 3. Sorry, guys, this is taking longer than I expected here, but let me just get through it. 1116. Yeah, try to get 14.2. And then row 1 is 186 divided by 3. 86 divided by 3 equals 62, right? Of course. Okay, so this is the layout for Apple, and I'll send you these updated workspaces. I put them into a little archive exe file. Doesn't install any program files or anything, but all you have to do is click on it, and then it'll move the files into the right folder for you. You just set whether it goes to Ninja 7 or 8, and obviously these would go to 8. Okay, so this is a volume divergence that's ending on an extreme density climax, and that was the high of the day right there. I think, yeah. So this is Apple. Stocks are a little different because the volume fluctuates a bit more on stocks. Whereas with futures, it's a little more consistent. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a little different. So, I mean, I haven't traded stocks in a while, to be honest with you, but from what I remember, you get quite a bit of different volume throughout a given month or so. So you would probably want to update these charts once a week, which is really what our goal is to do. with the futures anyway. I just have been doing it about once every 2 weeks, but I think with stocks, you would definitely want to update these values once a week. Looks like here, this is the tick 1. We probably have volume divergence there on the road too, because this is, there are a minimum number of bars you have to have between the start and the end of the setup. And that wasn't quite met there. So let's see. Yeah, it's not quite met there either. Probably this row 1 here. Nope, because it's a major spike and not an extreme spike. So I could allow that, but I don't like allowing the major spikes on these really fast charts. You know, otherwise I'd have volume divergence here. Well, there anyway. 2 churn bars in a row here. You've got a kind of a conglomeration of churn up in here. And there's your big, it's not quite volume divergence here. It's actually lower volume at the initial swing high, but you have a massive extreme churn bar right there. 288% relative volume right at the high. And see, you started seeing the supply coming in at the previous high. And then it goes up for one more. And then you have basically hit a brick wall right there. This is a little volume divergence on a retracement. Ends on essentially, well, it is a 2-bar pattern, but it is a little bit different because of the fact that on this climax, it's already closed back up. So this churn bar, rather than being down here at the end of the climax, I mean, in the data series, it's still going to signal like a 2-bar pattern, but it's already kind of turned back up a little bit. That's really even a stronger sign of demand because it's, moved up out of the low. A lot of these 2-bar patterns will end with that churn bar still kind of down near the low. But here it's already turned up. Here it's actually already turned up. And here it's already turned up. And those are 3 turning points there. Pretty cool. I was thinking that was a lower low, but I think it's a double bottom actually. This stuff still amazes me. Yeah, it's a double bottom. Pretty crazy. There's another 2-bar pattern at the end of a volume divergence. Pretty amazing stuff. All right, so that's Apple. We kind of got sidetracked there. Let's go over this template here. Yeah, but Scott, BlackBird doesn't work with 0.15. Bloodhound and the VolumeAnalyst work fine. And it works fine with the previous versions too, but BlackBird doesn't work with 15. It just came out today. So there are some breaks, some code breaks. I can't get over this huge amount of volume in the ES. At least relative volume. Pretty massive. Anyway, let's do this. I'll move this one out of the way. The VA not showing up is probably because you saved a preset, Scott. So if you uninstalled and reinstalled, that gets rid of your presets. That's actually how you get rid of the presets. So real quick, for those of you that actually own it and have run the original version, if you save a preset for the relative volume or the volume analyst, if you change the properties and you click right here and you click on that save button, the next update, it's going to drop the volume analyst from all your charts because it's got those old values saved inside of the UI. I don't know why they did that. They used to save it into a file, but now they save it directly into the UI file, the user interface file. And the only way to get rid of it is to load the old version and click on restore, or remember to click on restore before you install the new one, or to actually delete that file or reinstall Ninja. So that's the only way to sort that out. I imagine, yeah, I didn't, Han, is that what's happening for you? It's just not even showing? Maybe, did you save a preset that you can remember? Yeah, then you can click on the volume analyst and click on restore. See if that doesn't sort it out. Yeah, I don't know why they did it like this, but for developers, it's a problem because, you know, we send out updates, and then if somebody saved that preset, then it, you know, doesn't open like the problems you guys are, or at least Scott was having. All right, let's do this here. So I've got this Bloodhound template, which is massive. You guys still awake? I think I've lost about half of you. Anybody paying attention? Shall we? Everything is always in real time, William, with the readers. Everything is always real time. So the second it fires, Bloodhound will give the signal. Everything is always in real time. So let me explain this before we get into all the details. The problem with multiple time frame systems, and I kind of touched on this on Saturday, is that when you're accessing signals from a higher time frame, so you always want to have, if you're using multiple time frames, you want to have those larger time frames brought into the smaller. You want to access the larger from the smaller, not the other way around. And when you've got time-based and non-time-based, that you may not always be able to get it exactly like that, because sometimes in the overnight, the time-based will be faster, and then during the day session, the time-based will be slower. So it depends on your settings. But anyway, when you're developing a multiple time frame system and you're doing back testing, let's say that for this entire 3-minute bar, I've got this extreme climax here, right? Well, when I access that 3-minute climax historically, and I'm running a back test, and I'm doing some whatever historical bar by bar work or what have you, if I'm creating a signal from that 3-minute bar, I'll begin getting that signal at the open of that 3-minute bar, which is up here. Okay, so I'll have a signal for the entire bar, which looks like it, previous bar closed, at 45. So I begin getting the signal on this bar right here. Let me mark it. Where's a little, yeah. Goodness gracious. Right there. This is why the toolbar is so important to me. I don't even know how to make these things bigger. What in the world? Can I make it bigger? I don't even think I can make it bigger. I don't know. This is crazy. It's about the tiniest little arrow I've ever seen. Anyway, that's the bar where I would begin getting the signal. For that climax. Now, do I want to get the signal for that bar? For that climax? Well, no, obviously. I don't want to get the signal until the time when that bar would likely have given the signal in real time, right? Well, when would that be? Well, I don't know. How would you know? Well, we know with this. Finally. But how you would do that with any other system? Well, you can't. I mean, that's why nobody's done it. So this is what makes this so powerful for multiple timeframe system development, because we can actually do back tests now that would resemble or be similar to what we would expect in real time. Okay, and I'm going to make this even more precise. But when we're accessing, when we're accessing a 3-minute chart, okay, let's go in order here. Let me slow down. I'm getting ahead of myself. These climax and churn signals are found in real time. So the second the conditions are met, everything is plotting in real time. Okay, the readers are accessing the signals in real time. Bloodhound is calculated in real time on each tick. So is BlackBird. They all have throttling, so it's light on the CPU. So they're all very, all the tools are very efficient and only running calculations when absolutely necessary. But so that we can get the signals when the thing occurs, right, when the conditions are met, it's all calculated on each tick. So what we're doing is we're not going to allow certain signals to even fire until this percentage right here, user defined, it's 50 by default, until that percentage of the bar has passed. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why we went ahead and created this counter indicator, updated it to, well, basically what we did is we had to design a method to be able to count down the row bars. So figuring out, when 50% of a 3-minute bar has been met or has passed is a pretty easy thing, right? It's a minute and a half. That's 50% of the 3-minute bar. And when it's a tick chart, it's pretty easy too, because it's a 50% of the tick value, the tick period, the period of the tick chart. With the row bars, you've got 3 different values. Well, you've got 6 different values. You've got 3 minimums, 3 maximums, and the next bar can plot or open when all 3 of the minimums have been met or when any of the maximums have been met. So counting that down and figuring out when 50% of that bar has built is not so easy. But we did this for a couple of reasons. Number one, to not run calculations for the first half of the bar to save on performance, which for Ninja 8 is really not really necessary, but also to avoid, especially for the relative volume, to avoid getting signals too soon, because that relative calculation for a non-time-based chart, because we have no idea at what time it's going to close, so we don't know what the actual future time value or duration of the bar will be by the time it closes. We're having to build continually updating and more accurate projections of what the duration of that bar will be. Okay, so it's a very particular set of reasons why we do it this way. And yeah, I don't need to get into all the details of that, obviously, but so that's what's happening here. We're not getting that climax bar signal until 50% of the bar has passed. So that means if this previous bar closed at 45, well, that means this bar closes at 48, right? Well, when would it be first possible for me to actually see that signal in real time? 46 and 30 seconds, right? So that's probably somewhere down in here. So what we can do with the readers is actually set when we'll begin getting the signal from that solver. And let me do this. I'm going to copy it so I can manipulate it without messing everything else up. I can just copy that solver, come back over here, and then right click and add it to the template. Now I've got a lot of days on this chart now, so it's probably going to be a little bit laggy. Trying to update in real time. That's not bad, not at all, actually. All right, so now some weird little update. Normally, you know, when I connect it, it gives me the signal right away, but I think there's just something with historical data in Ninja 8 that's a little funny. I'm hoping this next update fixes that. It's not a big deal anyway. It doesn't really affect anything in real time. And the solution is to simply either recalculate all the readers using the reader manager, clicking this recalculate button, but that would actually take too long. So what I can do is just close it, open it back up, and then open that solver and close it. So this property right here, and this is not the actual names of the properties. It's much more, you know, intuitive. These are the names of the properties inside of the code. So these are the display names. The property display names are just not sorted out inside of Bloodhound yet. It's a simple thing to do, and I'm sure he'll add that in the next update. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to reload the chart. Let me just do that real quick. The only reason I'm hesitant to recalculate all is sometimes it takes a little bit longer than reloading the chart, but that's actually pretty fast. It's not slow at all, actually. So the way that it's set right now to 50%, it's eliminated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars where it wouldn't have been possible for me to get that signal in real time. So why would I want to get it historically when I'm trying to back test or, you know, visualize when those signals would have occurred historically as I'm kind of developing this stuff out and putting all this together, how do I, sorry, I'm just reading something here. One second. Yeah, we wouldn't want to do that. So why not eliminate that if we can? And the only way that we can is through this pretty advanced reader system, which took a lot of craziness to actually get it to work. A lot of time. So you'll see if I change this, let's just change it. Whoops. I'll change it back to 0. So then I'll get the signal for that entire bar. Let me just recalculate and see how long it takes. Oh, it's instant. Yeah. So at the close of this bar, I begin getting the signal, and 1, 2, 3, probably, yeah, it looks like 4 of those bars would have been impossible to get the signal for in real time. So that's kind of the multiple time frame issue in a nutshell. You guys understand what I'm talking about there? I know this stuff's a little bit tedious, but yeah, it's not all rainbows and sunshine, this stuff. But that is pretty important to know when you're dealing with multiple time frames. And you know, previously without that option to be able to cut off the first half of the bar where the signal would have been impossible in real time, people would get signals historically and then run replay and you know, not get that same signal and wonder why. Well, it's because in real time that signal wasn't possible because you were getting the signal 3 or 4 bars before it would have occurred in real time, you see? So that's a pretty important one to know. So that's the way that I've staggered all of these different conditions. Different ones require different values. So if I'm reading a tick chart, I don't know for sure, you know, that 50% is based on time, because that's the way it has to be for now anyway, until we can add in some more condition checks or load in a multiple secondary series or something. But anyway, it's based on time. So if I'm reading a larger tick chart, I don't necessarily know for sure that the midpoint in time is really the midpoint in the number of ticks. But there are a few other checks that we could do that we'll end up doing, I'm sure, to be very precise with it. So rather than using 50% for some of these tick charts, I'm actually using like 30 or 40. For the volume divergence, I think I'm using like 10% because the volume divergence can, you know, typically fire at any point during the bar. There's no percentage requirement for volume divergence. And what else? For the chart that the reader is on, which is this chart, this row 1, it doesn't, you don't want that 50% property enabled. So I've got it all disabled. So pretty tedious putting this together and then double checking it. I mean, I think I found an error just about 5 times in a row every time I went through it. So yeah, this is actually looking for smaller moves. That's what this is for. So I was saying that I look for larger moves in Ninja 7, and then this in Ninja 8 is attempting to find some of those smaller ones. So these are the different conditions for each of these charts. I've got the spikes, which you've seen with the drawing objects. You've got extreme, minor, major is that little white dot there, all based on several different inputs and conditions. The 2-bar pattern, different stages of those. You've got extreme, climax followed by churn, and then this one is any climax followed by any churn, Okay, so that's what this is. This is a 2-bar pattern. It's a climax followed by a churn bar. That's what these are, these 2-bar patterns. And this is actually the extreme one right here, because that's an extreme climax followed by a churn bar here, you see? And that's one of the more important signals, that and the volume divergence. And then we can actually access the density plot by itself. So let me just kind of give you a once over here of this, just briefly. I know you guys are probably getting tired. I am. These are the different data series that you can access. Primary barcode, that's the main volume plot. It's climax and churn, and increasing or decreasing or low volume. Low volume is actually found at the open of the next bar. Okay, the open of the next bar, because you don't know actually that it's low volume until it closes. Combined barcode would be to look at the density and the volume. So this is a high density climax, high density extreme climax. That's a certain value. In the combined barcode, the 2-bar patterns, there are 4: normal climax followed by normal churn, normal climax followed by extreme churn, extreme climax followed by normal churn, extreme climax followed by extreme churn. Those are the 4 2-bar patterns. In volume spikes, there are 3: upper range high, lower range low. I'll show you those in a second. And then volume divergence setup, which are the dots. Those would be the bars that have the highest high at a high, or the lowest low at the low, and then the trigger occurs after that based on some price action conditions. And then this is the actual value of the plot, of the main plot, primary plot, which is the skinny plot on top. Okay, data handling, this is extreme or last. Okay, you want to use extreme always when it's a barcode that, you know, gives a 1, -1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, a certain signal has a certain value that the bar is set to for that signal. But if it's a price-based value, such as the upper range high and lower range low, you want to use last here. And then somebody wanted to be sure it was rounded to price or something, so we added that in. Let's see. This is the lower range low. Sorry, this is the upper range high, which is the resistance line from an extreme climax. Sorry, not an extreme climax, an extreme spike in the volume. So there's an extreme spike. There's the resistance line that's produced subsequent to that. And you only have 1 resistance line per bar, 1 support line per bar. And the next extreme spike would update that value to the high of that next extreme spike bar. Okay. Any questions on any of those data series or anything? So we'll be adding in, I'll be kind of splitting those out into churn and climax, and it's going to be much more specific and precise. And then I'm going to have leading climax and ending climax. And right now they're basically directionless. So just to show you what I mean. Yeah, you see this. This is the extreme, sorry, it's the high density extreme climax for this one. You see how I'm getting this kind of a brown signal here? It's because it's giving me both +1 and -1. Well, essentially it's, the bar is set to a value, 10 or 11, and from Bloodhound, I'm getting both a long and a short from that value. Okay. And then I define the direction based on either the spikes, the volume divergence, or these trend conditions, or some price action conditions. Okay, but I should change that back to 50 now. And I can delete that one anyway. Yeah. Okay, sorry. All right, so let's do this. Let me just kind of show you a little bit in market replay real quick if we have time. What is it, 7 o'clock? Goodness gracious. Well, let's do this. We'll do BlackBird next time. Probably. I may just do it tomorrow or Thursday. I'll do it this week. Yeah. Within the next 3 days. So either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and I'll send out a link. If not tonight, then tomorrow morning. And we'll do BlackBird then. Let me go over the kind of rules of the template a little bit and show you a couple of signals here at least. Unless you had the volume analyst before, Raymond, and you saved a preset. Is it not loading for you, or you haven't loaded it yet? That was a little weird. That took a while to load that time. That was kind of odd. I swear it has some weird stuff with the drawing, but I know they fixed a lot of this in this recent version, but I can't run it until until he's had a chance to sort out the changes so that BlackBird can run right. All right, so this is the load today. So let me just kind of define a little bit about how I've done this. So rather than using those linear regressions and having to load a ton of bars in the chart, I'm using the super trend indicator, and you'll see it in your indicators now. It's from Harry from Fat Tails on Big Mike's. So he's built out all these indicators, which were originally on Ninja 7, and now he's got a couple of them. Well, he's got a lot of them on Ninja 8, but the only ones that I have here are the trailing stop related ones, or at least for you guys, the ones that you'll see. The super trend, the volatility stop, the Wilder, ATR stop. I think those three. So I have the Wilder volatility stop and the super trend. I've got 3 super trends, 100, 200, 400. All are using a 200 period ATR, looking at raw range, not the average range. And then the Wilder has an internal fixed period. And all you can do is set the look back of the actual ATR and then the multiplier. So I'm using this for the stop for order set A. And then I'm using an offset of that for a little bit of the trailing for order set B. We'll go over the details of all that in the next one within the next few days. Hopefully I'll I might just make it for Thursday or Friday so that I can have the user guide to go along with it, and you guys can follow along in that while we're doing it, so I can actually do a better structured training session for all this, because it is, working with Bloodhound and BlackBird is not, it's difficult enough as it is. And volume is obviously one of the more difficult things to understand. So, it's confusing enough as it is, and I want to try to simplify it. So I'll try to be better organized for this next one and have a guide for you guys. All right, so just to kind of go over a little bit about the rules here. So again, the volatility stops, the super trend thing is only for trend, the red and blue ones. Basically, we just have to be above one of them for a long or below one of them for a short. And that's essentially it. It's got a built-in trend identification data series, which makes Bloodhound just a little bit faster, maybe, since you're using a threshold solver and not a comparison solver. The comparison solver would be comparing price in input A to the indicator, like I'm doing here. Well, since I've shown you this, what this does, it just tells me whether the bar is within 4 bars of the lowest low of the past 75 bars, or within 4 bars from the high of the highest high of the past 75 bars. So that's what this solver does, where I'm comparing the high and the low, the highest high of the past 4 bars and the lowest low of the past 4 bars to the lowest low of the past 75 bars and the lowest or the highest high of the past 75 bars. That's what this little condition does. It just checks to make sure that we're actually, making a significant swing low or a significant swing high. That's what that condition is for. But what I would normally do would be use our indicator reader so that I can set this to a fixed period of time rather than number of bars. So I would want to read that from a minute chart with a specified time period, half the day, quarter day, full day, 2 days, 3 days, stuff like that. But here, because I'm putting Bloodhound and BlackBird on the row bars, which I would do anyway. I mean, that's what I do because it's the fastest chart, and it's enables me to control the maximum range of the bars so that my entry bar will never be larger than 9 ticks. Okay, if you've worked with automated systems before and you're actually waiting for price to turn in favor of the trade before the trade fires, then you will have seen, some of your entries occur on these massive reversal bars that just some random announcement that comes out of nowhere, or, freak crazy things happen sometimes. And this chart mitigates some of that risk by setting a maximum. So none of my entry bars will be larger than 9 ticks. That would be the maximum. Most of them will be, a few ticks. Okay, so this is the trend set of conditions, which, it is what it is. Trend is a function of perspective. So it's not rocket science here. We have to define whether we're going to allow a long or a short, and there are countless ways of doing that. So the main problem that I see with this, and just a little caveat here, this is not, it's not a fully automated system that you're going to flip a switch and, turn on the ATM. You're not going to pay $1,500 for a system like that and expect to make, you know, $1,000 a week or whatever. But the way that I would use it, obviously you're not going to trade this in NinjaTrader with the BlackBird beta in a live account anyway, because you can't, because the live accounts are disabled until it's out of beta, and for good reason, obviously. But the way that you would want to do this would be, you know, until we have everything in Ninja 7 with the market geometry and all that, you would want to define direction yourself. And then let's see if I can just at least enable it here so I can show you what I mean. And then you determine whether you're going to allow shorts or disable them. So you would set the direction here, at least, you know, for now, based on your analysis from the way that I do it is from the higher time frames. You know, what pattern are we in, and where's the next likely area of major support or resistance, and am I going to allow trades to the next area of support or the next area of resistance, or from one or the other, and you know, dominant trend up or down. If it's up and I'm looking for longs, and I enable longs and disable shorts, you see. So that's kind of the way that I would be using this for now. And then obviously the way that we do it in the trading room, if I can turn these trend channels on. Ninja's trend channels their drawing is a little weird sometimes. It's like it doesn't snap to the bars properly. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think it's just the this version. I imagine the new one is sorted with all the fixes they have in there. Yeah, there's an example of it. See, I've got it set to snap to the highs and lows, but it's like it's snapping to a value that's not there. So I think they just have to sort out their snapping algorithm. It's a little funny. But anyway, our toolbar takes care of that. It's got its own, it uses the chart as a canvas, basically. So see, we've turned up from this major, perfect, awesome, excellent, obvious area of where demand is likely to come in. And, you know, it's kind of obvious, picture perfect. High before the low to the highest high, and then back to here. And of course, if I drew, let's see, a pitchfork from left to right. Not again. Right there, perfectly at the low. Missed that one. Dang it. One of these days, I'll actually be able to trade with my time. So there's a big volume divergence. It's almost on the verge of being a little bit too far away from that starting swing. And you do have a setting for that, actually. So if it were too far away, which it's literally probably half a bar length more and it would be disabled. You can show a little object. So if you think you're missing a volume divergence, you can actually draw max distance cancel object, and it'll draw a little black line where this maximum distance from the starting swing to the end swing canceled the volume divergence. Yeah. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm losing train of thought here. Big volume divergence turns up from a pretty obvious area. And then you get a higher low off that same area before the close. And then today it gaps up. And then what does it do? Pulls back right to that major low where all that huge amount of volume came in. Right there. So that's the trade that I was going to go over today. I mean, we can go over a little bit, but I'm not going to try to run market replay now. It's kind of an important thing, and we've already been talking for hours. So you guys are going to have to be alert when we get into BlackBird so you can remember what I'm talking about. All right, so what all do we have there? So this is the RTH chart, obviously the regular trading hours, eliminating the overnight. And like I said, we gapped up today, pulled back to the low where all the volume occurred. And let's see what else. Yeah, it's just gorgeous. Look at that. 3 churn bars in a row. You don't see that very often, although you see it here at the high and then here at the low. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, you don't see that too often. Huh. That's a good looking bar. This stuff still amazes me. It's crazy. But yeah, obviously, you know, you add volume to the chart. You think you're going to get any sort of signal like you're getting with these? Not really. It's relative volume on a tick chart. It's kind of, I shouldn't be selling this stuff. It's ridiculous. Whatever. I'm here to help. Here to help. Yeah, and you're at the bottom of that channel. Man, it's just too perfect at this low. See, this is stuff we would all draw with the toolbar. Man, it's just absolutely perfect. Unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, right there, I've already got plenty enough for the trade. I mean, I wouldn't even need anything else to take that trade. And then what would you do? Well, what would your target be? Well, in Bloodhound, it would be, or BlackBird, it would be a fixed distance, but then I would have some other conditions for exiting if they were hit. So if those certain conditions were met before reaching the target, then it would automatically exit. But what would my target be manually if I were buying that low? Where would I try to trade up to? Top of that channel, which it hit perfectly. And this is the tick chart. I mean, you do this on minute and tick. Yeah. Pretty easy day in the ES today. It's not always that easy, is it? All right, so that was the low here. So these are the 3 progressively larger, typically larger charts during the day session. You know, in the overnight, it's a different story between these 3 charts. Typically, the tick chart will be the slowest in the overnight. Yeah, the tick would be the slowest. Then the row 2 would be the next to slowest. And then the 3-minute would be the fastest. And then during the day session, it would be the row 2 would be the faster, tick 1 slower, 3-minute slowest. Remember that tick 1 emulates about a 2-minute chart according to the settings that we use in the time frame tuner. Let me just see the difference today because we do have a lot of volume starting to enter. I'm curious what this value is today. So I think it was like 1530 or something a few days ago. Yeah, see, it's 1736. Huh. So I'll increase. I'll reset all this when I send out the next workspace. Is probably well, definitely between now and Friday. Probably tomorrow. It won't take me too long to finish everything up now that I've finalized the layout of all this. So starting with the 3-minute and then working our way down, you don't have anything. This is the higher low that we would go over. You don't have any. This is after the reversal up, right? That 30-minute major area, and on the 15-minute, all coming together at this low. Then you've got the higher low before the close, and then we gap up. Most of that volume came in before the open, actually. Yeah, a few minutes before the open, 3 minutes before the open.